let me ask you. So, I want to understand how you ended up building this brand. But what was your childhood like?
My childhood, I was kind of blessed very blessed. My mom and dad just your family had passion for something. And we live in a country where we can be free to pursue our passions. And my mom and dad, they grew up in a little town, Willard, Missouri. They were both born in 1911. They didn't have much. My mom was one of 10 kids that grew up in a 2-bedroom house. My dad was raised by his great aunt. But to them, they were rich because they woke up every day and they could hunt and fish, and they raised me and my sisters. There's an area called there in the Ozarks is referred to as a float fishing capital of the world, just beautiful streams. And so I grew up fishing. I grew up loving to fish on the rivers. And then when I was 10, they built Table Rock Lake, and I went to open house with my grandpa. He was pretty upset because it flooded his best fishing holes. I can't repeat what he said, but he was not happy. But what we didn't understand, it created habitat, and the fishing became great. So when I was like 21, I fished in the first national bass tournament, and I met fishermen from all over the country, and I just knew I wanted to be around the sport of fishing and try to be in the fishing business if I could.
Yeah.
My dad had a liquor store on the way to the lake, so I went. There was a Gibson discount store there in Springfield, and they had a good selection of gear. But I kept going in. That manager, I was a good customer. He said, "John, I can't get permission from the home office to carry all these lures like Bill Dance and rolling all these fishermen were using." So then I talked my dad into put tackle in the store, and we just called it Bass Pro Shops.
So the first Bass Pro Shop was a liquor store with tackle.
Yep.
And where was it?
It was in Springfield, Missouri on South Camel, and that store was about the size of a lobby like in Concord. It was 1,500 square feet. And that's our only store for the first 13 years we were in business.
13 years, that was the store.
Yep.
So when the first week, right, what do you got? Just like a rack of lures that your dad gave you this little corner over here, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. So I had this buddy of mine, Steve Reed, was a fishing buddy, and he worked at a convenience store. So I talked Steve into coming to work with me. My dad is interesting. He didn't loan me the money, but he co-signed my note at the bank because he wanted me to know the obligation, the responsibility. So we got $10,000, and I got a U-Haul trailer. We went over to Tulsa. There's a little shop, Okie Bug, and they wholesale out of the back door. So we filled that up and put a padlock on it, went out on town honky-tonkin'. We came back. The trailer is still there because if that trailer, that would have been the end of the company before it started.
Yeah.
So
That'd
anyway,
have been a bad decision.
Yeah. Anyway, everything worked out. So we just, like I said, we called it Bass Pro because it was real descriptive. We wanted to just be specialists in bass fishing gear.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you brought all that stuff back to the liquor store.
Yep.
And how much room did you initially have in the store? What was your footprint?
We had 2 gondolas that, I don't know, it was probably half the size of this room, if that. And I love this room, by the way, on the podcast. It's a very friendly place here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right, so
Oh yeah, so was it like day to day? You just in there selling fishing lures
Every
in the back
day.
of the store?
Every
Yeah, because
day.
you're in your 20s, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and every time we'd run tackle on sale or lures, and he'd sell some more beer, but we kept pushing this beer over and putting more bait in
I was
there.
gonna say, after 13 years, how much space did you have?
Yeah. Well, we started a catalog a couple
Okay.
of years later, and that's how our business really started to go, was more catalog, and still just had that one shop.
yeah.
In the 70s, starting to come.
What was the moment when the alcohol left the building?
It never did.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we moved down the street
Right?
and opened up. It was kind of ironic, Dale, because that Gibson's discount store many years later, it came up for sale.
Yeah.
And so we bought that. It was 80,000 square feet. We had moved our warehouse in there. We had a store that was 20,000 feet. So
Yep.
and then we had a big window. Customers could see their orders being filled in the back, and had our offices, everything. So that's where our headquarters store, where you've been, you guys, before us, that's where it is today. We
Yes.
just added on to it over the years.
Okay. And what's become of the original building?
It's still down there, and we took part of it and recreated a little replica museum of the original store.
Yeah.
And every time there's some important meeting in their company, I love to go in there and just stand behind the counter, it stirs a lot of emotion, like where
Yeah.
did we come from and how important it is to listen to customers, whether you want to or not, and for
Yeah.
your people. So it's still there as part of our little museum.
Yep. So, what was the? How do you bass fishing? Lures. You're. I imagine in the first handful of years, you felt confident in and around all of those things, but eventually your store footprint grows. You're bringing in other brands. You're offering other services and products, hunting products, and just continuing to grow as a business, right? I mean, how do you, I guess, how do you manage that and not make, I guess you make mistakes, but how do you manage it and succeed without failing? Because that could have it could have went either way. Right, where there's some moments, I guess, when things were touch and go.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
And so I come here and I see you have your family here, right? It's your personal family and your work family. And that's to say how important that is. And I, sitting across from you, Kelley, I wish if I'd have known, you're going to be here and I was more organized, I would have invited my sister Susie because I have three sisters. Two of them were involved with the business for a long time. And like my youngest sister, Susie, she's real sharp. Like every time we get report cards for years, I'd always tell my parents, well, wait till she gets in the 3rd grade. Wait till she gets in the 5th grade. Wait, all the way up. She's real smart. She came in one day and we had all of our mailing list was on this old machine called the dressograph, these little labels. And they're just falling out of boxes all over the floor. She says, Johnny, if you're going to be serious about this, these are your customers. You're just losing their name. You've got to get your inventory on a computer and your customer list on a computer. So I said, okay, you do it. And so she came to work and helped us in some of her systems she put in place, still service, and my other sister. So a lot of family involvement, and you can't beat it.
Yeah.
I mean, some days it's like this, but
Yeah.
it's the best. When you come down, where's the loyalty? It's like your family, and you ask Dale about how's our company grow. It's like a work family, and just the blessing of having a lot of people with a shared passion, whether it's here at racing, us with the outdoors. That's about everything.
Yeah. What was it? What was the opening up the second location a big intimidating? I mean, there's moments when you got to basically reinvest, right? You take money you're making in your brand and your company, and you have to turn around and if you're going to get somewhere, you got to put it all right back in, right? And so imagine, opening another store or growing your business, there were some moments where you had to reinvest big capital into your brand. Were those moments intimidating at all?
Oh, yes, but I mean, it's like racing. There's a time you got to go for it, And so our second store was in Atlanta, and I got a call from a realtor, and there was a concept grocery store called Fresh Festival, and it had gone out of business. And, man, I thought, it was a great location on I-85, but it was just a box. It was like, and our main headquarters where you've been in Springfield, we had invested in a lot of attractions, like waterfalls, aquariums, indoor archery ranges, things that take better care of the customers. We call that store Outdoor World. Well, we were going to Atlanta. We debated, okay, do we do like Sam Walton and just go to smaller markets, not so intense competition? Mm-hmm. But for Bass Pro at the time, our catalog customers, Atlanta was like a hotbed of fishing in the southeast, and we knew that as a hub, so we just figured, hey, let's go for it, because if we win, we could win really big. We'll just see how we fare there. And we didn't have the money to make that store like Springfield. I didn't want to disappoint customers, so we called that store Bass Pro Shop Sportsman's Warehouse. And we had murals and we had some mounts, but it wasn't quite the same as our headquarters. But we had the gear, and good people. And I felt like the biggest challenge would be the people, because we'd been operating this store for in our headquarters over 20 years. And we built a great team. So how do you have people behind the counter that are knowledgeable when it comes to fishing or hunting or anything to do with what around our business and taking care of customers? And really surprising that people, we attracted people because of their passion. And that's the kind of people
Yeah.
you want, you know, from managers all the way up and down the troops. So that kind of, and we transferred some people that had been with us for a long time, but our ability to attract fellow sportsmen to come and serve other people that love the outdoors, that was surprising how many good people we could get.
The success of the Atlanta store gives you all this confidence to continue to go into new markets.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how you know, most people when they're setting out in the retail business, it's like the square footage and how much sales you can make out of the square footage, and they want to just turn and rotate everything. You built these Bass Pro Shops, and you say the Atlanta store didn't mimic the Springfield store. At what point and how did you decipher and know that it was going to work to build destinations for your shoppers that are outside of that retail dollar? You know, because when you go in a Bass Pro Shop, you can have all kinds of fun without ever spending a dime.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being customers, too. So that's a very good question. My sister Susie, I mentioned earlier, we heard about this store in Freeport, Maine, LL Bean. So we take a field trip there, and I couldn't believe it. And it was a big, giant store. And all these people, they were getting several million people a year to come through this store. And that's what really inspired me. Like, if they can draw that many people to Freeport, Maine, we can draw a lot of our catalog customers to Springfield, Missouri, relatively small town. But we had, our catalog sales were good, and we built up some, a good, healthy
Customer base,
balance
yeah.
sheet. So we didn't have to go to the bank and just say, what's the payback on this aquarium? We just wanted a store to be a daydream store for our customers, you know, and just a fun place. And so in 1988, we had this event called the World Fishing Fair, and had all the pro anglers, and like you guys came to to a similar event. But man, we had like 250,000 people come in 3 days, and they paid actually $10 to get in the store, but we gave it all to conservation. But anyway, that put that store on the map for sure, and investing in the fun aspects of the store has been very popular. I think a uniqueness that we have that our customers enjoy. And part of it's educational, you know, for kids, and conservation messages, and just a fun place.